As horse owners, we've all come across behavioural issues with our horses. I know I certainly have. And today at World Horse Welfare Bellwade Farm, I'm going to be chatting with Gemma Pearson, who's the Director of Behaviour at the Horse Trust. She's going to be talking through some of the common behavioural issues she sees in her line of work, and she's going to be giving us some management tips on how to deal with them. So Gemma, what are some of the common behavioural issues that you come across in your line of work?
So I come across a massive range of behavioural issues, and obviously as a specialist in behavioural medicine I see a lot of the more complex ones now. But at the same time, we still, in terms of what's common, I would say problems with leading and ponies potentially being bargy or not standing still are really common. See lots of unwanted ridden behaviours, and then also common things like clipping, farrier, loading. How about you? What problems have you come across?
One of the issues that I've seen or have come across is ponies that are really needle phobic.
Yeah.
You know, you manage to do a couple of vaccinations, talking with like young foals because they don't really know what's going on. But as soon as they've learnt that this strange person, the vet, turns up and they smell funny, and then they just walk up and they then associate that person with the needle. So I have had problems with that. Is there anything, advice you could give me for working through these things, instead of just trying to hold on to them to the best that you can and get it over and done with as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so I actually think that's somewhere you need to be a little bit careful with, because people say let's get it done as quickly as possible so it's less stressful.
Yeah.
But I imagine if you went to the dentist and you go, I'm really scared about being at the dentist today, and they go, okay, sorry, we've got some big nurses here. What we're going to do is we're just going to strap you down in the chair, and we're going to strap your head back, strap your arms down, open your mouth, we'll get it done as quickly as possible. Whereas actually what they often do is say, if you're not confident, lift your hand up, I'll stop.
Yeah.
So if you feel you have some control over a situation, you're actually a lot braver than you would be otherwise.
Okay.
So with the needle shy horses, from an owner point of view, the best thing you can do is teach them to stand still and teach them to lead off of leader up pressure, so not off of cues such as saying back or stand still or body language or anything, just off of leader up pressure. And then you can get them used to just having the skin, a skin twitch on their neck and raising where we might do to go into the jugular vein.
Okay.
But then there's always going to have to be some work that's done with the vet, because they often associate the vet with
it's
this,
that unknown person. Yeah.
Yeah, and I sometimes think, do they know what a vet is, or does their owner's behaviour change because the owner gets anxious and that triggers, oh, this is someone that might be a vet.
Yeah, I need to be worried about this.
Yeah.
So you'd start just by you could go and use your clicker training. Is that a good thing to use for that?
Yep. So the first thing even is just teach them to back up from pressure and release the pressure as soon as they step back, and then you can lead them forward. You put backwards pressure on the leader up and they stop straight away, and until you can do that anywhere, whereby even if they get anxious, they step forward, they feel the pressure and they stop straight away. Teach them to stand still as a habit. It's really useful as well.
Yeah.
And there are some videos on YouTube from the Beaver Don't Break Your Vet series that you can look at those
to start with.
So once you've got that done, then you could do some click training to help them to be really confident. So you might start off by putting your hand on your pony's neck, and then you click and you give the food. And what you're looking for, the click is the exact behaviour that we want them to perform again.
Okay.
So what behaviours do you think you might be looking for in that scenario?
Well, not only that they're just stood still, but they're relaxed and stood still, because you can quite often see that you can get a horse to freeze and they have that panic and the wide eyes and the nostrils are flared.
Exactly.
But that's, again, so that's not this precise. It's how precise you need to be with the click is the most important bit.
Exactly
right,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah. And a straight head and neck as well.
Okay.
Because we don't want them to either be disappearing away or looking around and starting to get the food too early.
Yeah, absolutely.
So straight head and neck, standing still, calm and relaxed. And then you build up to getting hold of a skin twitch, and then you build up to putting some pressure on, and then you put more and more pressure on, so you might do that with a pen.
Okay.
And if you've practiced that a few times, you're setting your pony up for success with the vet. Now the vet might need to do a little bit of that on the day as well, but that's generally going to work.
That's
really
a lot
well.
of homework that you can be doing in between. And luckily, you hope that your horse is not requiring lots of injections. So if it's just an annual vaccination, for instance, that you've got lots of time that you can work between these things.
Yeah.
So it must be really important then to be able to understand your horse's body language. How much does that come into when you're looking at behavioural issues, with the horse's body language? And, is there signs that they show us when they're in fear or in pain, for instance?
Yeah, so lots of signs that we see. And we could go on forever about every individual change in the nostril or the eye or things. But I would say just look for tension.
Yeah.
Just think, can I see muscular tension? That would be my kind of takeaway message. Because even if you can feel it, if you've got a hand on a horse, you can just feel that slight muscular tension, can't you? And that tells you that they're not really that relaxed in that scenario.
I see. And thinking about behavioural issues that you see, how common is it that they are pain associated rather than psychological issues?
Yeah, so in my caseload, at least 80% of cases have pain as a contributing underlying.
80%, wow. So that's something that you should, if you're having a behavioural issue with your horse, that you should really be thinking as like a first line, is there pain here?
Absolutely.
Is the horse in pain? Is that why he's reacting? He's not being bad or naughty, but is he trying to tell me that he's sore?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and having a chat with your vet about that, potentially seeing an equine behaviourist or a veterinary behaviourist if you think pain is a contributing factor. And I'd say one of the things that is two things in terms of determining whether it's pain or not. One is how well they respond to a behaviour modification programme. So if you start doing some retraining with a horse and you've trained other horses and you're fairly confident in what you're doing and it's not going well, they're the ones that tend to be painful.
Right, okay.
And then the other aspect of that is if the behaviour is quite unpredictable.
Okay.
So sometimes people say to me, he's really Jekyll and Hyde. Some days he's great and other days he's really spooky and nappy. Again, that's much more likely to be pain than it is behavioural issues. Behavioural issues are actually much more predictable.
Right, okay. So if it's a behaviour, then the horse would maybe be displaying that behaviour every single day rather than really sporadically.
Yeah.
Because that is something I've come across, with having ponies that have had lameness issues, is that some days they would go out and be absolutely fine, and then other days, it was just a non-starter, like you couldn't even get on them. And then you'd think, well, why is, you get frustrated, don't you? Why has this happened?
Yeah.
But that's because there's external factors, for instance, with lameness, and for instance, if, say if it's a nice day and it's nice and warm, if they're a bit arthritic, then they're not feeling it, so much.
Yeah.
So but if it was a behavioural issue, it's much more likely that it would be consistently the same.
And I think people will recognise that. Any people that have pain, it's almost never constant, is it? Kind of chronic pain. It waxes and wanes, and within a day it can be better at certain times of the day or worse at certain times. But also over the course of several weeks or months, you have times when you're almost pain free, and then other times when you feel really stiff and sore.
Yeah, absolutely. I see. And looking ahead, if there's anybody listening that has got behavioural issues with their horse or pony, is there a plan, that you would think, is there a place to start where you can start as the owner, start looking into helping your horse out as a start, and then going further down the line, maybe getting a vet or a behaviouralist involved? Like, is there something that you can recommend?
Yeah, so I think in terms of who to get involved, always kind of speak to your vet, because we know that pain is a common problem.
Yeah.
And actually, accredited behaviourists have to work under veterinary supervision. They have to have a referral from a vet.
They've got to have a referral, yeah.
So if someone's saying, I don't need to see your vet, then they're definitely not a qualified behaviourist.
Right.
They may be a trainer, they may be a very good trainer, but they're not a behaviourist.
So it's really, really important that, you need to have your referral from your vet to get somebody who's qualified.
Yeah. And there is a register of the Certified Clinical Animal Behaviourists, CCAB, and they're kind of a mixture of vets and non-veterinary behaviourists. And what's nice is that they're species specific.
Oh, wow.
So you can make sure you only get someone that's been trained and that has proven they've got the knowledge and understanding with horses.
For horses, yeah. And is there anything, say for instance, let's pick a problem with my horse doesn't load.
Yeah.
As an example, is there pointers that you can give to start someone off, so like a baseline level, there's tips that you can try before you then go further into getting a vet involved, for instance?
Absolutely, yeah, because a lot of things, so loading's one. We could also talk about clipping.
Yeah,
there are lots of kind of common scenarios that we can resolve. They don't necessarily need a behaviourist. So loading, what you have to think about it from is the horse's perception of loading. So we talked about kind of negative reinforcement before. Now, how many times have you seen it that a horse starts walking towards the trailer, they get a little bit anxious, so they stop, and then someone puts pressure on, and they go to step forward, and then they put more pressure on them to try and keep them going. So actually, they're almost doing it in the wrong order.
Yeah.
They're putting pressure on when the horse is attempting to go forward.
It's that same, let's get this over and done with as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Like quickly keep him going kind of thing.
And use momentum.
Use momentum. Yeah, because that's always, I'm like, yeah, keep going, don't stop, don't.
Yeah.
And I think I've done in the past is gone, like, don't let him think too much about it, don't give him the time to think about it.
Yeah.
Is that the wrong thing to do?
Well, sometimes it works. Sometimes it goes on, but if you've got a horse that's problematic to load in, then no, they definitely need time to think about it. And what these horses learn is that all the pressure is on them when they are kind of near the trailer, and if they suddenly pull back, or they kick out or they rear, often that's a release of pressure. Because if a horse suddenly pulls back, you get pulled off your feet, and then as you regain your balance, you release the pressure on the lead rope, and they've moved away from the trailer. So I want us to think, we talked about negative reinforcement of you apply pressure, the horse steps forward, you release.
Yep.
So you might do that away from the trailer, make sure that works first of all.
Yep.
Then you might do that near the bottom of the ramp,
Yep.
make sure it's still working. If it's not working, that tells you that the horse is a little bit worried about that trailer.
Yep, so you then need to almost take it back a step
Yep.
and make sure that you've got that negative reinforcement, pressure release down to an absolute T before introducing the trailer.
But doing it by the trailer.
To start with, so good.
Yep. So we've talked about the physical pressure on the lead rope. There's another aspect of pressure, and that's the trailer itself.
Right, okay.
So when horses run backwards away from the trailer, they're increasing that distance away from the trailer.
Yeah.
So they're removing the pressure.
Sure.
So what we want them to do is we want them to step forward to the base of the ramp, and if they do that confidently, might give them a scratch, and then I step them back away, I reverse them away a couple of steps from the trailer.
Okay.
So they think every time I get brave and I go near the trailer,
I then get to
step away from it again.
Yeah.
So that gets them more confident.
I see.
So then you might do it to step them just 2 front feet onto the base of the ramp. And that's where you might even think about having some food.
Yeah.
So as the horse steps up onto the ramp, you could use a cue word such as yes or good or anything like that, and you could give the horse a little bit of food.
Yeah.
And then again, just let them stand there and relax if they want for 10 seconds and then step them off.
Yeah.
And you'll find, you do it a couple of times, they're like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, they get quite confident then.
Yeah.
It's the same technique we were talking about with the needle shy. It's the same thing. Just
break it down
into
steps.
really easy steps. You know, it's a process to try and tick them off. I see.
Exactly. And if the horse isn't wanting to go forwards, you need to work a little bit more at the level that they're at. But you'll be amazed how quickly, if you are, letting them take a few steps back each time and then bring them forward and getting food, it's really predictable. You're doing the same sequence over and over. They feel they can control it. If you put pressure on them, they step forward, the pressure goes away, they then get the food for stepping forward. Yep. So they'll just get more and more confident, and you'll find they're confident to load in no time at all. Now, what I would say is what we're aiming for is a horse that wants to walk in the trailer. We're not aiming to get the horse in the trailer.
Yeah, because as you said before, you reward the behaviour that you want, rather than the other way round.
Exactly. Yeah. And people often think, I just want to get them in, but then you often apply more pressure. And then that makes it a negative experience for the horse. So you might get them in that day, but you're more likely to have problems in the future.
And then you're often in a rush if you're going to a show or an event. There's that added pressure, and then we change our behaviour, which in turn then affects the horse. So
exactly,
it would be best if you're practicing this, make sure that you've got plenty of time. And it's a patient game, isn't it? Doing these sort of things.
So a lot of people say you must have so much patience. And I'm not sure I do.
No.
I like to get things done as quickly as is feasibly possible.
Effective.
But it's got to be effective.
It's got to be effective, yeah. So make sure that everything you're doing with your horse is effective and you're doing it for a reason.
Yeah. And if you take the time it takes a lot less time in the long run.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas if you try and rush things, it runs into problems. And you said about human behaviour change as well. So one thing I'll often do is once the horse is loading confidently, I'll say do a few practice sessions at home before you go somewhere. And the first journey, I'll say, or the first journey where you unload the horse, because you may even just take them around the block and bring them home and unload them again, and then make sure they load the next time. If they don't, that might be an indicator that there's pain involved, if the journey was uncomfortable for them.
Oh, really? Well, that's interesting to know.
But the first time we actually unload them away from home, my advice is that you go somewhere that you could hack home if you need to do. Yeah. Now, I do not do that for the horse's benefit.
No.
The horse doesn't necessarily understand that concept.
No.
But I see owners sometimes think, now, they're practicing at home and they're really confident. Then they go to a show and they go, now I've got to load him. Yeah. And the horse goes, what's changed? Yeah, and it's that same, it's the person changing their behaviour. Because you see it all the time, it shows and it's stressful, and then other people start getting involved and with, opinions, and
you can see people get really stressed with it as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned there about using your voice. Does the horse, when I say like, oh, good boy, good girl, reward the horse with my voice, do they obviously can't understand my words, but does that work as effectively as like the clicker? Or
okay, so there's a couple of different concepts here. So our voice rewards are not what we'd call an innate reinforcer for horses. Horses have not been genetically selected to want to please us through our voice cues. Yeah. Dogs have. I'm sure you know. You say, "Oh, he's a good boy." You smile at him. They wag their tails.
Yeah, the tail gets all excited. And
yeah. How often do you see a horse get excited when you tell them that they're good?
No, you don't. When you've got a bucket of food or it's dinner time, different thing.
Exactly
but never,
that.
You wouldn't just go up to a horse and start speaking to it, and it would be like, oh my goodness, kind of
get
all animated.
So food, and also giving them a nice scratch where they start twitching their upper lip or leaning into you. So we know that they're enjoying that. Yeah. But the voice is not a reward. Now you can use that to go, yes, that was the correct behaviour, now you're going to get a reward. So that's where we talked previously about classical conditioning, Pavlov's dogs, whereby if you press a clicker or you say good or yes or da or whatever it is you want to use, if you then follow that with either food or a really nice scratch, the horse then learns whatever they were doing when they heard that word or the click is what they need to repeat again next time.
In order to do the food. Absolutely, I see. Brilliant.
So do you want to talk about clipping?
Yes. Let's move on to clipping.
So clipping's another really common one. And again, with my vet hat on, just be careful. If your horse used to be fine to be clipped and now isn't, that would make me think that pain or pathology is possibly an indicator here.
Right, okay.
And I see quite a lot of itchy horses, particularly those with leg mites and things like that, that become difficult to be clipped.
Oh, because it's actually, it's painful.
Their skin is sore. So it's really important that we get on top of that before we think about that.
Okay.
But let's say, for example, you had a young horse that's just really anxious about the clippers. So first thing you might do is just get them used to the sound.
Okay.
Now we're going to use Pavlov's dogs, classical condition again here. So you might turn the clippers on. They may even be kind of behind your back. And then you just give the horse a tiny bit of feed, turn them off. Yeah. Turn them on, feed, turn them off. I mean, this is Pavlov ringing his bell and giving the food.
Yeah.
Once the horse is good with that, you might stroke them with one hand, turn them on, whilst you're stroking, then give some food, then turn them off.
Because that's sort of getting used to the movement that you would use. Is that right?
Yeah, and they've just got that physical contact.
Yeah.
And you may start off with some really tiny clippers, until the horse is used to those, and then we build up to the big ones. But whether you're using the small ones or the big ones, then if the horse is fine with you doing that and they think, I just relax, it's again predictability and controllability, it's the same sequence of events. I stay still and I relax, and then the food happens. Then you might go, okay, so rather than being behind my back, I'm now going to put the clips on my shoulder. Then you might put them on your elbow, then your wrist, then they might go on the back of your hand,
so
and then if you can,
they've got the feeling almost,
so the vibration
coming through.
Increases as you go down, and then you can just quietly put the clippers on the back of them. You might take the blades off. If you're using the tiny ones, you might turn them round so we're not actually clipping hair off that we don't want to clip off, and just get them used to being stroked and having the clippers moved all over them. And they think as soon as they do that, then I get a little bit of food for it, and they'll form a really nice relationship with the clippers.
So it's really important to get that process right from the get-go. So say if you've got a newly formed partnership, you've just got a new horse, it's really important to go through all these things. You kind of don't want to just dive in and then get to the point where the horse gets a fright or something happens. You're trying to avoid that ever happening. Is that the idea with this?
Absolutely. So it's so much harder to fix things when they've been broken than do it well from the start. So if you've got a young horse and you think, oh, I want to clip it, don't wait until you need to clip it that weekend.
Yes.
You can start building up a couple of weeks beforehand.
So in this case, it's always prevention is better than cure with these things. So
Absolutely.
if you try and tick the boxes off the list correctly with regardless, doesn't matter, loading or clipping or catching, tying up, standing at a mountain block, for instance, if you do it correctly, then you're much more likely to have the correct behaviours going forward. Yeah. And the horse is much more, because you're comfortable and happy, then the horse is much more likely to be comfortable and happy.
Yeah. Exactly that. And think about the motivation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of unwanted behaviours we see, people say they've just been naughty, they've just been difficult, they think they're boss. We know that horses don't believe that they are in some sort of dominance hierarchy with people.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Right. Okay. Because you quite often see, you need to make sure that he knows that you're the leader, and So that doesn't work.
That's not true.
Really?
We have no evidence that horses believe that they are dominant or the boss. Or, I mean, what are they trying to achieve? You know, in a horse-human relationship, what would they achieve by being the boss? And so actually it's more about behaviours being reinforced or not. And if an unwanted behaviour occurs, you've always got to think what motivates it.
Yeah.
And we know it's not so dominance.
Yeah.
People sometimes think it's some kind of more complex thing, such as he knows if he does this, then he gets away with this, that. And they're often more complex. So I would say the majority of time, the horse isn't offering the right response. A lot of, like I say, 80% of my cases, there's pain.
Yeah.
So horses that don't stand at the mounting block, we see a lot of very low-grade hind limb lameness, back pain, poor saddle fit, riders too heavy, go down lots of different routes.
Lots of rabbit holes to go down with that.
Exactly. And then after pain, it's usually fear.
And that's the main two,
Exactly. So ruling out pain or, just investigating, particularly if you make some progress and then they go backwards again, is really important. And then after that, rather than trying to stop them doing what you don't want, just train the desirable behaviour instead.
Yeah, so fear and pain are probably the top two that contribute to behavioural issues, rather than he's just a bad horse, or he's just naughty, or he's doing this to spite me, or because they don't have the ability to do that, do they?
No, they don't have the cognitive ability. And I would almost think of horses a little bit like toddlers. They've only got
next time I go and get my pony out the field, I'm going to be like, hey, you big toddler.
Well, I would think about the emotional capacity of a toddler. And sometimes even if they know what's right at that point in time, they're emotionally, they just can't.
No.
Because in toddlers, I'd say overtired, it's less common in horses.
Yeah.
But, they're just, with horses, it's normally fear, sometimes frustration as well. So just recognising, okay, at this point in time, my horse is not coping.
And what would be a sign that they would show you that, say a horse is not coping with a situation, there's it feels like it's under too much pressure, what behaviour would they display, like, to get out of that?
So if they are coping, they should be calm, relaxed, confident. They might be enthusiastic. If you're going cross country, then you'd expect a bit of excitement there. But if they're not coping, we're getting the muscular tension. The steps are fast and jerky. The horse is not as responsive to your cues. Even if they're excited to go cross country, it should be harmonious. They shouldn't be bolting or not going forwards or flipping sideways or going up in the air. I think just look at your horse and just think, do they look calm and confident or is there any tension?
Relaxed. Exactly. Do moody mares exist? Is that something that you see quite often? Behavioural issues specifically with mares or stallions that are maybe not the same with geldings, because quite often this term moody mare, you see all the supplements out there to, calm your mare down. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a lot of companies making a lot of money out of these supplements, isn't there? Okay, so I hear people all the time say, I think it's hormonal. She's always in season.
Right.
Now, what do you think? So if a horse owner comes to me and they say she's always in season, what behaviours do you think they might describe when I ask them to describe those behaviours?
That the mare is particularly sharp, or maybe some people might call it fresh. That she's maybe a bit sensitive when being tacked up, sensitive around her back end, much more likely to kick out or bite maybe.
Ears back,
grumpy, doesn't want to maybe interact. Just speaking from a bit of experience, because we've got a few brood mares at home, that they tend to be much more feisty with other horses, and that can maybe come across with people as well.
Okay, so you'd mentioned before that you had a stallion at one point. If you were covering a mare in hand and she had ears back, grumpy, tail swishing, kicking out, would you be trying to cover her with the stallion?
No, because she would be saying, like, I'm not up for it.
She would be saying, I'm in diestrus. I'm not in season at this point in time. Yes. So none of the behaviours we describe are related with being in season. So behaviours related to being in season would be raising the tail, urinating, but not so urinating and swishing the tail is either an appeasement behaviour through fear, or it can be stress. So normally they stand, they spread their back legs, they wink. They're really tolerant. So sometimes people, if they're checking mares, they will like slap them on the back to see whether the mare reacts to that or not. Mares in season don't, because a stallion's going to jump on there. That's where his front legs are going to be. So actually, when a mare is in season, if anything, they're less reactive and they're more tolerant than when mares are not in season.
So how did that start? It's the wrong way round, isn't it? That when we say, oh, my mare's constantly in season, it's back to front.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say if you think that this is a problem, people often say they cycle, keep a diary.
Okay.
How many days are they difficult? How many days are they not difficult? Now, there are some very specific things horses get. So one of them is what we call a granulosa theca cell tumour.
Big words.
Big words. Basically, you don't need to worry about the word.
No.
It's a tumour on the ovary that produces testosterone.
Okay.
So these mares do become aggressive and do have problems due to hormones. But that's because mares are not designed to have lots of testosterone flowing through their body.
Quite right.
There are some other things that are related to seasons.
Yeah.
But actually, when I go back and look at these cases, a lot of them don't respond to being on things like Regimate.
Right, okay.
Or people think they're doing the short term, but in the long term there's often no difference. When we go back, if you actually keep a good diary, they're not as cyclical as you think. They wax and wane, but can you think of anything else we've discussed that might wax and wane and cause a horse to be grumpy and unhappy?
Changes in the environment, for instance, or
Yep.
changes to work, or how you are, or pain.
Yeah, exactly. So the vast majority of cases I see where they go, she's always in season, they're actually pain cases.
They're pain related.
And it's pain that's waxing and waning over a period of time.
And then they would just be maybe confusing that with the hormone.
Yeah.
Hormone imbalance
Exactly.
as such.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, because I've never even thought about that. Like that, because people will do, moody mare, or she kicks and she bites me, but she wouldn't do that to the stallion if she was in season.
No, they love the stallion.
They love it. Yeah,
stallion could do anything.
Yeah, they can, because the stallion can be jumping all over them and roaring, and they stand there perfectly calm and happy because that's.
And they actually tolerate other mares more when they're in season as well, unless they're between them and the stallion maybe. But generally speaking, they're just tolerant to anything. So if you've got a mare that's unhappy being girthed up, that is not consistent with being in season.
It's more likely that there's pain somewhere else.
If you had a mare that's, aggressive to other horses and then has several days where she's not, and then goes several weeks where she is, that would be more consistent with when she's in season, she's happy with other horses. When she's not in season, she's more likely to not be. But no, I don't believe there's such thing as a grumpy horse.
Really?
The vast majority I see are, so pain's the most common thing. After that, frustration.
Yeah.
So if the horse is hangry, if we're not giving them enough forage, and horses do, if they're not eating enough, they have a psychological need to eat, and that can cause a stress response. So that can make them difficult.
Yeah, because they're designed to be on the move and eating all the time, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of the majority of the day. Am I right in thinking it's the majority of the day they're supposed to be?
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't really be. I mean, obviously you bring them in, tap them up, you ride them and things like that. But whenever we're kind of leaving them to it, they should always have food available. We shouldn't be leaving them without food, realistically.
And is that when, if they're in stables for a long period of time, you start to see behavioural issues like cribbing and weaving, and is that all to do because they're used to eating all the time?
Used to eating and being out with their friends and things like that. And even if people put them out in, and obviously we need to be really careful in terms of laminitis management and managing horses' weight, but sometimes we'll put them out on like wood chip paddocks and they'll give them a small amount of soaked hay, and that can be effective for weight loss, but actually you can end up with some really unhappy horses, and they're the horses that I would say are often really grumpy and just really unhappy because we're causing a stress response in them. So maybe having a chat with your vets. There are some newer drugs that we can use now whereby the horses can maybe have a little bit more forage. Maybe we can use straw, or hay that's been soaked for 12 hours, obviously remembering things like equine asthma.
Yes.
But having a chat through that.
It's just really difficult to try and get that balance right, to reach that harmonious level that we're all trying to get on with all of our horses, that we're all in harmony, peace and harmony, and everybody's happy. But it's a difficult thing to do. Yeah, for sure. Fascinating. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
What an interesting conversation that was with Gemma. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please drop us a comment in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. There's so much to cover, but some of the takeaway things that I felt were really important during that conversation is to remember, we as horse owners need to be asking ourselves the question, why is my horse behaving like that? Is he in pain? Is he fearful? Is he frustrated in some way? And remember that if his behaviour is really unpredictable, then it is likely that it is pain related. There's so many things that you can do. Of course, get in touch with your vet and they can refer you to an expert behaviourist like Gemma. And remember, trust the process, make your training achievable. The nasty horse, the grumpy horse, the moody mare, these do not exist. There's always a reason for our horse's behaviour, and we should be asking ourselves, what can we do as horse owners to help our horses? Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comment box below. I'll leave a link just up here to another video in the series. In the meantime, if you would like to subscribe, you'll get notified when more videos of the series are released. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon.